Right, hello there ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's video. And today we are going to be looking at replacing this HDMI port on this 1200 series PlayStation. Now, as you can see, this port itself is looking rather sorry, and it does look at some point as though the encoder IC has been replaced. Probably could do with a bit of a clean up, actually. It probably could do with a bit of a tidy up, this thing. It looks a bit sorry for itself. But yeah, essentially, this board came in a little while ago for a port replacement. So I figured we've got one, of course, for the older 1000 and 1100 series PlayStation. We'll do one. We'll do one for this one as well, and so that's what we're going to do today. So now then, the issue with this particular machine, when we've tested it, is it does turn on. It does turn on to a white light. But the only issue we have is that the port itself, you don't actually get too much of a picture until you go wiggling the port, and then you get like different coloured screens. So you get red screens, green screens, dots all over it, so on and so forth. And it just generally, it just isn't very good. So we are going to replace the port, and hopefully we'll get a picture back on our PlayStation again. So, as I say, this appears to have been reworked at some point. There's flux all over it, which is, never great. It's never great. So we're just going to go and see if we can tidy this up a bit before we do any further work on it ourselves. So this is what we're going to be doing today. Happy days. So the actual process itself isn't too much different from the older ones, to be fair. This is mainly just like a procedural update, really, more than anything, more than sort of anything you really desperately need to know. But it's always good just to cover things off and just be thorough. So, as I say, it would appear that's been changed at some point, or at least somebody's had it off and put it back on, one of the two. So what we're going to do is we're just going to check those filters there just to make sure they're in one piece, because funnily enough these do tend to fail on the 1200s quite regularly. They were fairly well, fairly robust things on the older 1100 and 1000 series machines, but on these, I don't know, they just seem to be a little bit more susceptible to failure. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go and we're going to record that for you now. So bear with me a sec, guys, and I will get the camera on the multimeter for you. We've just put our dial into continuity mode, as can be referenced by these little these little sort of wavy, sort of volume speaker liney type icon in the corner there. So what we're going to do is just going to measure top to bottom. Now these EMI filters are exactly the same as the ones on the older PlayStation. You can indeed nick them from an older PlayStation board if you need to, or even a PS3 board if you've still got some of those kicking around. So we're going to go top left to bottom left. So these things basically, they're just big coils of wire. Should read continuity from top left to bottom left, top right to bottom right, but it shouldn't read anything left to right. If you read anything left to right, it's bad and should replace it. Now occasionally these chips here, these ICs can fail, and the actual output across here inside the actual chip can fail. So if you pop these off, because these are easier to remove than this, if you remove these and then just test the two pads left to right on the nearest the chip, if they still read continuity with this missing, your IC is bad. Now that's not by far and away an all-inclusive test to tell if you've definitely got a bad IC or not, but they do tend to fail across the output, these things, a bit more than what the older ones did. So we've got top left to bottom left. We can see there we have a nice low reading, 1.5 and dropping. Bit of crap on my probes, of course. You can hear the beep there from the multimeter. We have continuity. So that's top left to bottom left. Now then, we're going to move our top probe here to the top right pin. And we can see we still get OL. Or we will when I put my backlight on there. So you should still be able to see now when we go to the top right side. We still get OL, open limit, infinite resistance, whatever. Number 1 on some multimeters. No beep means no continuity, which means our two sides aren't connected. Brilliant. With the bottom one over to the right, we can see we have continuity. Two arms dropping. Nice beep means our filter there is good. So our left side is talking, our right side is talking, but it's not talking across, which is what you want. So we'll move on to the next one. Check that. Okay, so top left, bottom left. Nothing, which is cool. Continuity, great. Checking left side on the third filter. Excellent. Nothing. So just check we're on the right side there. We are indeed. Fantastic. Fourth filter. Ooh, now then. You can see here. So we're on the left hand side of that filter. We move across to the right hand side and we still get continuity. That's bad. That means we have communication across there and we shouldn't have. So that could give us a clue as to where we've got an issue actually. So that's across these two output pins here. So what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to remove that filter. What would you know? An example where we explain something and we actually find one on camera. See, it always pays to be thorough and check before you go replacing bits, because with my bloody fingers. That's because I'm burning my fingers. Oh well, we'll have to replace both of those now. So I don't know what's happened to my tweezers recently, but the the heat-proof coating on them is knackered and it keeps burning my fingers. So I just burnt my fingers and then ended up knocking that filter off. Not ideal. Not ideal. Amateur hour. Anyway, let's go back to the old multimeter. So I'm just going to give that a quick squirt. What would you know? An example on camera coming to life right before your eyes. It never happens, but it did today. So, we had, of course, continuity from the left side to the right side. If we measure that now we've removed that filter, you can see nothing at all. The short has gone, which is brilliant. That's exactly what we want. So, who knows? We might be able to replace that filter and get away with this. Let's see. So, what we need to do is find a board with some filters on it. Have we got any? Have we got any boards with filters on them? Let's have a look. That's not going to be enough. Look a bit horrible. Probably be good, but don't look brilliant. Let's get one off. That's got none on. Ooh, I've actually got an SAC board with a couple on. No idea if they're any good, but we can test them. We can test them, alright. So, let's see. So, this is our SAC spares board. You can see it's got a couple of filters left on it. So, let's just see if these are going to be any good for the cause. And then, of course, once I've done this, I'm going to go straight onto Amazon and order myself some new tweezers, I think. So, top left to bottom left. I really need to clean these probes. They're filthy. Okay, that's fine. Oh well. Oh, for bloody hell's sake, that backlight. The lighting in this office is atrocious. So, left side, correct. Right side, 0. Right side we have reading. So that one's good. We could probably reuse that one. This one here, left side is good. To the right, open line. To the right side. He's fine there. Excellent. So those two filters we can have those two filters. That's good. So that's made me happy. So what we'll do is we will get our board back in here so you can see it. Get my board there. Let's get some tweezers. I'll burn my bloody hands off, and then ladies and gentlemen, let's get some fume extraction on and some hot air. God, I need more room in here. I need more room in this office, so I'll just drop a bit of flux onto the board and onto the two donor filters so we can get them off in one piece. Preferably without roasting them. Okay. So, just bear with me a second while I remove one of these donors. My desk lamp isn't happy. Now then, where did that one escape to? Oh, marvellous. I think I've just blown one up the air filter. Oh dear. Bloody hell. Just got to knock the airflow down on here because it's bloody hands up. Right. Hopefully that. Okay, we'll flow these properly back into place in a sec. But I have to go find another board now. Honestly. Right. Right. Bloody hell. This is the problem with trying to do this underneath the scope at the moment with a straight tip, because I can't get my air wand underneath the scope how I'd like it, so I end up having to go in at a bit of a funny angle. I'm just generally not used to it. So I normally use the scope for inspection, or if I'm doing any fine soldering work with the iron, it's fine, but with this big bulky air wand, and I think, to be honest, that's probably the only criticism I've got. Oh, fucking hell. Of the 861DW is that the air wand is particularly bulky. And just tried to burn my fingers off again there. So let's try this again. Try and keep my fingers away from it this time. I can still feel it. It's still burning my fingers. I really do need one of those dog leg tips, I think, for doing this sort of stuff under the camera, because otherwise I'm going to have no finger ends left. So, a bit of flux, and hopefully these will flow into position. Surface tension there, you can just see starting to move those right where we want them. Okay, lovely. So, let's see then if it's had any bearing. On our multimeter readings, so I'll just give them a quick brush with the IPA. Lovely jubbly. Finger ends are now killing. I'll see if I can find a dogleg tip for this air wand, I think, because trying to do this work underneath the microscope with the air wand with a straight tip is not doing my fingers the world of good. And despite the fact I try to keep them there and be brave, automatic reflexes of the human body stop you from burning your bloody self. I move my hand and knock everything off, and generally look a bit of an amateur. Probably am, but anyway. Top left, bottom left. Top left, bottom right. You can see now we have no continuity. But right to right we do. So what we'll do is we will stick this back into our machine, and you never know, we might get away with not actually having to replace the port. Might just be the filters. My God, I can't believe an example where I've actually warned you to check something first has actually occurred on camera, live. Amazing. Anyway, getting ahead of myself. So let's put it back together, see what we get. Right, okay, so we plugged it in and tested it. But we've still got a problem, so at least we've sorted one problem out. So it's always good to check those filters in one piece before you start this, because it's a lot of work to do if it's something straightforward like the filter. Of course, it could still end up being something like an encoder IC for us, but just have to wait and see. So what we're going to do now is just replace the HDMI port. So we can see here that we have our 4 ground pins. Okay, so this is the bottom side of the board now. So these 4 points here are the actual locating holes for the port, which is here. You can see it's covered in crap and God knows what else. So whatever's on the outside, because it's quite messy on the top as well, is probably all inside the port, and it's generally not very tidy, so we'll see what we can do. So we're just going to add some flux to the to those locating ground pins there, and we're going to add some leaded solder to them. So do be careful here, because on the older PS4, of course, the port was out on its own. On the newer ones, you can see here you have some components. You have a little diode here, very close to that leg. You have a resistor here, very close to that leg. A couple of 2K, well, I think they're the 2K resistors from the other machine, across the bigger diode, of course, from the old machine. These are now on the underside. But again, they're all very close to the underside of where the actual port sits, so don't go too mad, because you will blow them off the board. So what we're going to do is we're just going to apply a little bit of leaded solder to these ground pins. And again, if you get too carried away with the amount of leaded solder you had here, you can end up sucking them all up and into the ball of solder on the end of your wand. And while not a massive deal if you've got donors and spares, it's not really something you particularly want to do. So by doing this, what we're actually doing is we're just diluting the crap down in the lead-free stuff that was used in the factory, because of course leaded solder has a much lower melting point than the lead-free stuff. It's a lot easier to work with, and not only that, but by using a nice big fat iron tip here as well, we're working heat into the board, which of course is important, because trying to do this sort of work on a cold board can be a little bit troublesome. So don't worry if you get solder in this pad here on the edge. That's a ground pad anyway, it's not hurting anything there. So that's got us a nice little head start. So what we're going to do, we're going to flip the board over, and we're going to put some flux down the back of these pins as well. So again, this will just help when the heat penetrates the other side of the board. It's just going to help flow the solder that these pins attach with. You can notice there already, look, that the heat from our iron has put sufficient heat into the board that it actually turns liquid on the other side, which is great because it gives us a head start. It means we have to do less work with the hot air and everything else. Now, I don't tend to like these boards facing away from me when I do this. For the simple reason, sometimes you need to get hold of the port. So, I'm just going to spin this around really quick. Okay, and we'll focus it in a sec for you. Okay. So, what we're going to do now is we're just going to pop this port out. So, we're going to get some hot air. 485 degrees C at 100 litres of airflow per minute, because you do need a fair bit of airflow. And I'm going to get a pair of mould grips on standby just in case, but hopefully we won't need them. We're going to go in with the air one now. Now then, I've never changed a port off camera, underneath this scope camera before now, and I'm having to use a straight tip to do it. So I'm expecting this might be fun. So you are going to have to pay attention as well to the central area between the port pins, because of course you need to loosen the data pins at the other side of the board. So just work gently back and forth. You can see the solder of the ground pins is starting to go molten there. You can see it's starting to go shiny. So we're just going to work gently back and forth, making sure we don't hover too long in one place. Make sure we get a nice even heat into the board. We don't get anything too hot. And you can see there, hopefully just off camera, that the edge of the port dropped out. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Out it comes. It is filthy. It is not generally very nice. Yeah, there's all sorts of crap inside it. Not very nice. So, while we've got a bit of heat in the board, just going to apply a little bit of IPA. I'm going with the brush, because this stuff's always, all the gunk and the horrible sort of nastiness is always easier to clean off when the board is warm rather than doing it when the board is cold. That's the mistake the last person made. So we're just getting the biggest part of the nastiness up and out of the way. Shouldn't really attack it with a paper towel, to be honest, but being lazy and haven't got any Q-tips to hand. But you can see that our components here, a little diode, little resistor, well, little resistors, are still in one piece and completely attached, no problem there, fantastic. Don't want to lose them if you can help it. So we're going to go back top side of the board. And we're just going to tidy that up as well. Everything's in the bloody way, wouldn't you know it? So this is the top side of our board now. And yeah, you can see it's all really rather gunky and horrible. Don't think we're going to need any flux on here, do you? So we're just going to try and get some desolder braid when I can find where I've put mine. Just going to clean these pads off. Now then, some of you eagle-eyed people may have spotted earlier on, when we were looking at the filters, that there were two pads on the edge of the encoder IC that looked like they were bridged. If you didn't spot them, I'll show you them in a sec. So these two at the top right hand corner, as it is, top left as well, looking at it, are actually bridged. The solder masters appear to have lifted slightly, but those 2 points are common, so it doesn't matter. That did raise my suspicion at one point, but no, I tested it against my donor, all absolutely fine, no problem, so not too worried about that. So, a bit of IPA again, just gonna give this a quick clean off. So we just got the solder braid there with a bit of hot air on the end of the iron, and just soaked up the horrible stuff. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to apply a little bit of the flux to these 4 ground locating holes and across the 19 pins for the port legs. Excuse me. And I'm just going to change the soldering iron tip really quickly to a fairly fine ended tip for reasons that will become clear in a sec. Because what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of solder to those pin headers. Okay, you ready? So we're just going to run back and forth there. Okay, you can see we've got a little bit of excess there on those couple of pads. Okay, fantastic. That should do it nicely. Those are just going to help the legs of our new port adhere as we would like them to. So we're just going to raise the board slightly off the mat so we don't burn anything. Now then, this could be interesting on camera because ideally I like to be over the top of these 4 ground holes. So the ground holes there, I like to actually get my iron over the top and get some heat directly into those pretty quickly. I can't do that here because I'm not going to have enough room with the wand and the microscope to get in there, so a bit of an awkward one really. So I'm just going to show you something in a sec on the camera itself as far as lining some of these ports up. Now if you buy the V2 ports, these tend to line up quite nicely already. If you don't have V2 ports, then just look at the other camera for a sec. Right, okay, so we have a HDMI port here. This is just a standard V1 port. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to show you a trick to get these things to line up. So if you just pop these in the board, you'll tend to find that the pins will stagger slightly. So they'll end up sort of like the pins will sit in between the pads, and it's going to be a real pain in the arse. What you want to do is just bend the left and the right side, so all 4 of these legs, the ground locating legs here, these things, it's a bit out of focus I think, but so the actual legs that sit through the board, just bend those as you're looking at the rear of the port to the right by the actual width of the leg. So only ever so slightly bend both left and right hand sides, front and back, just to the right ever so slightly. And what you'll find then, hopefully anyway, is that the pins, when you put the port into the board, will sit rather nicely on the pads, and everything lines up nicely, and job's a good one. So I'll just show you this again now on the actual scope camera. So just here, hopefully you'll be able to see this if I just zoom out a little tiny bit. We'll zoom in even. So you can see there, we've just kinked them over ever so slightly. Yep. There we go. So that's all we've done. Right, so now then we're going to try and install this port. So I've got a pair of mole grips here that I like to get hold of the port with. Okay, like that. And we're just going to drop this in. So the way we're going to do that is get our hot air wand again. As before, we have 485 degrees C at 100 litres of airflow per minute. And we're just going to go in with the air wand now. And we're looking for those ground holes to go nice and shiny. So we're getting fairly close to the board, but do be careful with the airflow because there are a couple of components quite close. And I'm having to angle the air in towards them as well because of how I'm having to film it. That's why I like to be over the top, because I can't blow anything away. But today I'm suffering for science and I'm suffering for you guys. So you'll see now that those ground holes are starting to go shiny. Just going to hesitate the heat on there for another 10 seconds or so. And that should buy me enough time to get the wand out of the way and the port in through the holes. So we're just going to drop the port in through these holes. Oh shit, well we would be if I didn't just smack the port out of my mole grips. So we're just going to go back and try that again. So we're just waiting for the solder to go nice and shiny. Just for it to go into a molten state. Just going to drop it through there, hold it flat. Might take you a bit of practice to get there, but it's easy enough once you've done it a few times. And then just going to swizz this board around. Just going to check it off the camera for a sec. Looks alright. And we'll just get some focus on that. And you can see there, yeah, not perfect, but not far away either. Certainly workable. We can live with that. Certainly a lot closer than it would otherwise have been. So we're just going to need to move those over ever so slightly. So if you do that, all I need to do is put a little bit of sideways pressure onto the pin, just to bend it over enough, just to make sure it's not going to go anywhere near the neighbouring pad. These are fairly close, to be fair. To be honest, ideally, like I say, you want to use a V2 port. That's the original spec for these things, but we haven't got any, fortunately. This needs doing, so it's a needs must. So again, we're sticking with our smaller soldering iron tip. Got our pins roughly in position where we want them. So we're just going to apply plenty of flux. You can fairly liberal. This is all going to get cleaned off later anyway. So remember, we pre-tinned our actual pads, so this should be fairly straightforward. All we want to do is go in with the iron, touch down for a few seconds, that should be that. So this is just going to tack everything roughly into position. So the V2 ports will line up a lot better. The V2 ports do line up really quite nicely out of the box. These are a little bit hit and miss. To be honest, I haven't done many 1200 ports, to be fair, but on the 1000 and 1100 series machines, just bending it ever so slightly over towards the right there is enough to actually pull these into place. Would appear them, you probably just have to tweak them over a little bit, tiny little bit more for 1200 if you're going to be using one of these sort of original V1 ports. Just Just making sure that we push our pins over far enough to make sure they're just not going to touch the neighbouring pad. And we can check that with a multimeter afterwards, of course, just to verify. Okay, so we're roughly in position there now, that's all good, they should be fine. But what we will do is we'll just apply a dab more flux, and then we'll just run the iron over the top. And what that'll do, I'm just going to tin the end of this iron as well with some fresh solder. And that'll just encourage a nice clean joint onto the pad. It'll all go nice and shiny. It's called drag soldering. So essentially what you get is the solder will actually follow the source of the heat, which is the iron. So as your iron passes over the top of the legs, the solder follows the iron across the legs and solders them all. Now if they all lined up perfectly nicely, you could just drag solder them from the beginning. As it is, ours needed a little bit of corrective action on the pads, so we've not been able to do it as precisely as I would have liked, but it'll do a job. So now we're just going to go in there with the IPA, give this a clean off. Now then, I'm going to stop being lazy and I'm going to go find a cotton bud. Or a Q-tip, as you might refer to them in the US, if I can actually find where I put the bloody things. Bought a new box of them the other day. They can't have gone too bloody far. I'm sure I've seen them already once this afternoon. Can I find them now? I want them though. Nope. Seriously, where the hell are they? Oh, bloody hell. Found them! They're hiding. They were hiding in a very, very silly place. So, if you are going to use Q-tips, of course, the thing with them is that they do like to leave sort of like linty bits and horrible sort of fibres everywhere. But if you rotate them as you actually work with them, the fibres they tend to leave are actually sort of pulled back up. Now then, if you overuse them, of course, and they start to shred, then as you can see there's a couple of fibres that do pull off. But providing you don't do too much with them, they're a fairly decent way of just cleaning your board. Certainly better than paper towels. So what we're going to do, now we've done that, we're just going to get the multimeter and we're just going to check continuity on our pins, and just to make sure, of course, that we have no bridges, no shorts, everything's connected properly. Okay, what we're going to do first though, before we do that, is we're just going to have a nudge test on these pins, and that's just going to make sure that these are all soldered and secure and that none of them are moving. So we just go down and give them a fairly firm push, nothing too hard because you don't want to damage them if they're not properly soldered, or end up pushing it that hard that you actually end up damaging the board. But you do want to give them enough of a nudge just to see if they move. Ours don't, which is nice. So we're just going to go and pop the multimeter on. I'm going to pop this into continuity mode. We're just going to measure left to right. So there should be no continuity on any of these pins. It should read open line, no beeps. Of course I catch the two probes together and then it beeps, but the pins should all read well. Like I say, if I crash my probes together they do read continuity, but of course when we actually just read the pins without me being a numpty, it's all good. So, we've still got a bit of crap on this board, as you can see from the previous incumbent, but we can sort that out. All we're interested really is in whether this now lives. So, I'll tell you what, while I'm here, I'm just going to check those filters over again, just to make sure we haven't done any damage with the hot air and melting some of them. They do tend to be a little bit fiddly on these 1200s. Crap all over them as well, to be fair. Continuity mode, of course, would probably help. Yeah, that one's good. That one's good. That one's good. Fantastic. So that's that in a nutshell, really, ladies and gentlemen. So we've checked the EMI filters, of course. Those are good. It looks like at some point this encoder IC's been replaced. So I guess we're not going to really know till we plug it in if that's okay or not. But you know, the port itself was looking pretty manky and horrible, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be the issue. So this one was really just to complete the collection of videos. You know, we've got a HDMI replacement tutorial for the older 1000 and 1100 series machines, so I'll pop a link to that in the description below if you need to see that. But obviously this is just a procedural update just to show you what to do with the newer 1200s, and I'm sure at some point we're going to get some of the either the PS Pro, which is 7000 series, or some of the PS4 Slims, which are 2000 series machines eventually. And of course once we do, and I'm sure we will at some point, once they're out of warranty and things, then of course we'll do update videos for those too. But yeah, I mean, these are a little bit more awkward than what the older PlayStations used to be, obviously, for one reason or another. As I say, because you've got the you know, some of the smaller components, some of the little resistors and diodes and stuff have moved beneath the port, of course, and everything's just a little bit smaller than it ever used to be. You know, everything's bunched up, and it is a little bit more tricky. You know, you have got to be a little bit more careful with your placement of the air and how much air you're using to make sure you don't blow anything off the board. But providing you do that, as you can see here, it's fairly straightforward, providing you've got the tools for the job. So, as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and hopefully this has proven useful to you. If indeed it has, then if you want to leave a comment, please do, and please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. We've over 50 videos now on the channel of various repairs on games consoles and other little bits and pieces of electronics, and that's only going to grow. We'll have more coming up in the future, of course, as and when. So, as I say, thank you for watching, and if this has proven useful, if you can, just let the end ad even just play out, and if it's of interest to you, just give it a click. It all goes towards helping what I can do on this channel, and sort of, you know, helping me out, and getting some bits and pieces, you know, new kit and whatnot. So obviously that'll be translating into more videos, so that's great. I have actually registered for some live streaming, which I'm hoping to have a crack at shortly. I do need to replace the capture card for that, which I use for the microscope, which won't necessarily be a bad thing. You know, should give us some better video quality and things, and allow us to do some live streaming underneath the camera. So hopefully that's going to come shortly. I also need to replace the tip on this bloody air wand to a kinked one, so we get a bit more room underneath the scope camera. Again, that'll help what we do. So it might be sort of like a month or so before we have a crack at that, but that should be good fun, hopefully. So keep tuned for that. We're heading towards 5,000 subs, so thank you to everybody who's subscribed. Again, that's always very much appreciated, and we'll probably do a 5,000 sub video at some point. I'm also toying with the idea of doing like a comments roundup video every month. So that's like taking the most interesting comments or common issues people are having that they're either messaging me with or put them in the comments or Twitter and things, and sort of like just summarising them up in a video and just addressing those just to the wider audience that you might otherwise miss. I think that could be a worthwhile thing. So that's another idea I've got toying around with. That obviously I'm aware that I don't get a lot of time to do this sort of thing, and my video count doesn't go up very quickly, but I would rather put quality stuff out there than quantity. So hopefully, thank you for sticking with me anyway, because like I say, I don't get a lot of time, but the fact that you guys follow what I do is very much appreciated. So on this Friday afternoon here in West Yorkshire, it's nice and sunny at the moment. Thank you for watching, and I will see you hopefully on the next vid in the not too distant future. So I've got plenty recorded, just needs editing and putting together. So as I say, thanks for watching, stay tuned, and it's for now anyway, bye from me. So ta-ta, and have a good weekend. We're going to get some hot air. So 485 degrees C, 100 litres per minute. Now I'm trying to do this underneath the microscope, and this is going to be a real pain to do underneath the microscope. I'm going to try and do it under the microscope for you. But essentially what we're looking for is to get this chip nice and hot. So this is the old one we are removing, and what we're looking for is to get this thing nice and warm. So we've put the flux around the edge. Now the thing to remember about QFNs is they have a really big ground pad in the middle of the chip, and that is going to act as a big heat sink. It connects direct to the ground plane and is going to try and draw a lot of this heat we're putting in away. So we need to focus quite a bit of our heat to the centre of this IC, and then go around the edges just to help the edge pads just loosen. So I'm coming with a pair of tweezers.